Hello and welcome to today's session this Saturday morning. My name is Henry. I am an SAP Material Management, Source to Pay, Procure to Pay, Supply Chain, EWM, FI, SD, PP, ALE, and EDI consultant. I've been working for different companies over the past 10 years. I've had the opportunity to train over 40 to 50 SAP consultants, and I have been training consultants who are interested in becoming SAP MM or EWM or FI and SD consultants, and some of them have already started working. We have trainings every year, and we have a list of trainings for next year within the next 4 quarters. If you're interested, please, you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow this account and you can email me. How can I be a part of the training? And I'll be more than happy to add you to that training. That being said, in today's session, we are going to be emphasizing in cost center. As an SAP material management consultant, you can best trust that the business would need your expertise within that area, especially because businesses are creating direct materials and indirect material procurement. So if you're not following this account, please follow this account, leave a comment. That will help me to reach more people. As you can see, we still are very new, but I will need your help for us to reach more people. All right. Now let's go into the SAP screen. So the first thing that I would like to draw to your attention is the system right now has been configured with a lot of settings. But one of the main settings that needs to be done if you want to start configuring is you need to create all your enterprise structures, your company code, your plant, your purchasing organization, your purchasing group, storage locations, and every other parameters that is required. If you have an SAP system like this that you can use for practice, I would advise that you begin to do these configurations to become more acquainted with it, so that way you can support your business, maybe in conversations in email chain, decision making, and so that you can be relevant in that conversation. So if you don't have access to the SAP system, we do give access to those who need to have access. You reach out to me and we can help support that. So assuming here you have configured the SAP system, and the next step is to configure the cost center. The first thing you need to do is to go to transaction code OKKP. And within this transaction here, you need to make sure that this configurations has been done for your controlling area. Okay. I'm paying more attention to the cost center standard hierarchy. So here I have defined the one for EIT LLC. And the next thing we need to do is to also execute this configuration in the front end of the SAP system. And this will be the menu path. Again, this is something that falls under the lap of FI and controlling. However, as SAP material management consultants, especially in the S/4HANA sourcing and procurement space, we are now required to have some of this basic understanding. So here you can see this is the controlling side, and you need to go here to the cost center accounting. And we're going to skip over the individual processing. We want to make sure that the configuration is enterprise-wide. So enterprise organization, as you can see, this is in the front end of the SAP system. So this is something that even the end users can execute as far as the back end controlling configuration has been maintained. Then they can begin to set up the cost center. They can also set the cost center using the KS01, which is the much more famous individual processing transaction code. But I would advise for us to instead use the standard hierarchy, the OKEON. All right. Perfect. Now you can double click into that transaction and you can see here that by default, the system is calling the standard hierarchy that I showed us in the earlier screen. So now if I go to that screen again, you can see here that the SAP system is calling this particular EIT LLC. So let's go there. So right here, you can see the SAP system is calling this EIT LLC. All right, so that's the same thing we're seeing here. And then the next step would be to click into the drop down and select the lower level group. And that is what you will see. And then here, there's just a couple of things we need to maintain. We can maintain for inventory because inventory can also have cost center. And there, after you have decided what the group name will be, for this scenario, I can just refer to it as inventory as well, okay? And then you can hit enter on your keyboard and the name gets adopted in here, okay? And that's pretty much all we need to do for the lower level. You can also directly hit save. And then from the lower level, you can begin to create your cost center, okay? So we're going to be creating cost center number 1. So in this scenario here, we can use whatever naming convention the business is going to give to you, okay? So for this particular SAP practice, we are going to be creating cost center for administration, services, rent, asset, fixtures, and fitting. So let's start with administration. So we can say ZUS, you can use the naming convention of your company code ZUS, and you can say something like this, admin. And then the name of the person responsible would come at the bottom, but for now we need to enter the name of this cost center. So I would say something like cost center, okay? Or you can keep this as the short name, and then you can keep this here as the long name. And here you can enter the responsible person. You can even search if it's available. But I'll tell you the best and easiest way to go would always be to just select the name if you know it. And here you can give, maybe it would be the administration manager. Again, the business would always provide this information to you. And then importantly, you can go here to the cost center category. And the best option would always be to select based on what you are configuring. So in this scenario here, I'm going to go with that W. And after that is done, you can go here and you can see it says fill out all required entry fields. So in this scenario, we're going to look for the business area. So before now, I have done some configuration into the back end, and these are some of the business area that I created for drill machine, for hammers, for swords, angle grinder, sedan, cyber truck, and aircraft. Now, also, if you want to learn how you can create business areas, you can go to SPRO, you can go to SAP reference IMG, you can go to enterprise structure, you can go to definition. And within the definition, you can go here to financial accounting, and here you have defined the business area. If you click execute, you can see some of them that I created, which I just showed you in the Excel. Okay. And that's pretty much how to create a business area. So in this scenario here, we can just maintain what the business area is that I want to use. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to use the one for drill machine or hammers or swords and so on. So I'll choose this one. Okay. And then also here, we can now assign our profit center directly to our cost center. So since this falls under inventory, administration, so here I can select, say for instance, this has to do with inventory. So I can say this one here has to do with the raw materials. So the business would be the best to confirm which setup they would like, but I'm just giving you guys the best practice here. And then also you can go to the indicators, and we don't really want to make any changes here. Otherwise, you can if the business requires that. And you can see that profit centers can also have addresses, communication, and then the history. Everything looks fine and okay to you. You can hit enter on the keyboard, okay? And that information is already maintained here. So let's click check. It says check successfully carried out. You can now hit save. And you see now the light has now been made green and your data has been saved. Now, the difference between the profit center and the cost center is profit center you need to activate manually. But as far as you click check into the cost center and it says there's no error messages and you hit save, it would save and automatically activate your cost center. Now we can either click this button and copy, create another cost center, or we can always just click down here and go to the cost center node and click cost center, and then another cost center screen would be activated at the bottom here for us to set it up. Now, there are some mandatory fields that we need to maintain, so we can follow the same process. So we can say this one has to, and we don't have to create so many for cost center, right? So we can say, let's just go for service. You can say service 1 in case you need to create more service later on. And this one here, we're just going to say service cost center. And we can copy this in here. CC. And we can give the responsible person, and this time around, we can choose another responsible person. It could be a name, it could be a department, it doesn't really matter. And then also you can go to the cost center category and select the best. So we can go for H for service cost center. And also here, you can choose whatever the business area will be. Since this is still under inventory, so we can keep it as, let's go to the drop down. So we can keep this for, let's say also for drill machine, okay? And then here also, we can assign the profit center. So we can keep the profit center to also be this one, raw material. If you're wondering what the functional area has to do, this also has more to do with finance. In this scenario, we're keeping the YB40, which falls under the category of administration. Let's say, for instance, since this one has to do with service, we can also come here and change it to the appropriate functional area. So here, there are so many options we can choose from, or you can use the find button and type the word service. And what the system will do will find all of the functional area with service, or you can click into the next button. You also have consulting and services. You can click into the next button again. I think I'll go for this one. Okay. And then you can hit enter on your keyboard. So here you have your drill machines, you have your consulting and services, and you can also have your raw material profit center. So everything here is fine. You can just do your due diligence and double check and click the check screen. And it tells you that your check successfully carried out, and then you can hit save. Okay, so we now have the service manager for ZUS1. So let's just quickly create one or two more just for learning purposes. So here we can select this radio button and click copy. Okay, and then you want to make sure you enter the one for rent 1, and the name can be rent, and the description will be rent 01 CC. And here we can say something like, we can keep it as human resources. And here you can go into the drop down. And the one for rent here, we can keep rents with management, okay? And then here we can say human resources, of course, and we can hit enter. And then here you can go to organization. And you can also find management. And we can maintain management here if we do have management. Otherwise, if we do not have management, we can also just keep it as admin, okay? Can keep it as an admin, administration, which is what we have there. And also we can keep this for raw materials if you want to. It's going to be a required entry, by the way. So you need to maintain a profit center in there. And then you can click check. If everything is fine, no errors, you hit save. Okay, and we can click from this and also copy to create one more profit center. So we're going to create this one for fixtures. So I'm going to say fixtures and fitting. So I'm going to say FI, and then T, fitting. And then here we're going to give the name to be fixtures and fittings. And then we can copy that and paste that in here, 01 CC. And we can also keep this as human resources and management if we wanted to, okay, because I think it's going to be good for that as well. And then here, we can keep also for drill machine, okay? Depending on whatever the business scenario is, you can always choose and keep creating as many as possible. What I've noticed in the organizations that I've worked is they keep as many as possible, okay? But for us as an SAP material management consultant, what you just need to learn is how you can configure these settings. And after everything is done, you can back out of the screen, okay? And that's pretty much how you can configure in the back end of the controlling area and the front end transaction where you need to go to and what you need to do to be able to create your cost center. And thank you. That is the end of this session. I'll see you in the next session. Please, if you have not followed, kindly go on YouTube and follow this account. If you have any questions, you'd like to be a part of our trainings, you can directly send me an email, or you can follow me on LinkedIn with my name. My name is Henry Okon, and it will be a pleasure to connect with you. Bye for now.